Welcome back on board the Starship, and we're talking with Andrew Johnson about chemtrails. Now then, Andrew, we're going to look at some more pictures now, evidence that something is, not quite just contrails. So, talk us through these pictures.
Yeah, well, let's just start with slide number 10 briefly, which is a picture that I took in, as you see the date listed there, 2003. And the reason why I'd taken this picture was for the rainbow effect in the middle, which is called a sundog. And this is a phenomenon which is known about. It's where you get a group of ice crystals which are angular separation of 22.5 degrees from the edge of the sun. It's to do with like the angle of refraction of the sunlight. You see this. And I'd taken this picture for the sundog, but as you see there's these three trails going across. And when I took the picture I didn't even notice the trails. I wasn't even looking for them. So in other words, they become normal in my worldview. As just ordinary aircraft trails, but to see three of them like that, and then the sundog, it's just.
So is that suggesting that three different aircraft passed that similar path, or is that one from each engine, perhaps?
No, that's three distinct aircraft that have gone over that path in a short space of time.
Right, and that's.
Showing,
if they're coming into land at the same airport, is that not?
Well, it's possible. That's all possible. What it's showing is that we've got the persistent trail phenomenon has happened on that particular day at that time, and it appears to be that one of the results is, the sundog is a weather effect. So the trails themselves, this is a point which sometimes is overlooked. Whether the spraying is actually being done or not, the trails themselves, whether they're just natural result of ordinary air traffic, do have an effect on the weather. And you can actually video that and watch it happening. And this is something that very few people actually ever bring up. The direct effect of aircraft trails, whether nefarious or not nefarious, on the weather, and you can observe this happening.
Right.
And then if we skip forward to slide 12, this was taken by a friend of mine in Yorkshire. And again, you can just see why have we got this unusual pattern. It looks like there's sort of a convergence pattern, and then we've got the other trail over on the right of the picture going downwards. That's okay. Then this was the wake-up call for me. This was taken at 9:45 at night, June the 10th, 2005. Got 9 intersecting trails. My argument was, well, how can it be that we've got this much air traffic, leaving trails for this long, to produce this geometric pattern in the sky? It just didn't add up to me. There was something not right about that. And that's when I posted it on the website, and I got a lot of people writing to me that they'd seen the same thing and started to ask the same sorts of questions.
It does seem very uniform, but again, you could say, well, there was 2 military exercises running perpendicular to each other.
Right, that's right. You can come up with explanations like this, and I can't say conclusively that that's not what causes them. I'm just, all I can say is, to me, it seems unlikely.
All right.
And this is where we get like a negative chemtrail effect. So, again, this just looks unusual. I can't really explain it, but why we should have the plane gouging out a section of cloud is unusual. So we've got that one. So this particular clip that we're looking at, I stumbled across sort of by accident, and it's taken from a Mobotics security camera. And it's a film taken in München in Germany. And in this clip we can see that we've got looking towards München, and over a period of about half an hour, which is speeded up by a factor of 60 or 100 or whatever the factor it is, we see 7 planes going across, leaving 7 trails in about a period of about 5 minutes. And then within that time we see this thunderstorm welling up, this storm cell. But before and after this we don't see any planes. So all these planes are flying.
So you've got a gap of half an hour where there's no planes.
Basically.
7 planes come across in 5 minutes at different directions. Then there's a thunderstorm and there's no planes after that.
Yeah, so that's basically what it looks like. And these 4 of these planes directly fly over where the thunderstorm actually becomes most active, which seems rather odd, because you'd think that you would want to avoid the thunderstorm if you're flying a plane and go around it. But at least from the angle that the video is shot from, it looks as if the trailing is affecting the development. That's what it looks like to me anyway. I'm sure other people will disagree, but
Right. The implication is that the planes have caused the storm by some kind of
or
whatever they've been.
Right, they've maybe not actually caused it, but they've somehow influenced the
Induced
development
it,
of it.
yeah.
They've influenced. That's
Right.
that's what I'm basically saying. It looks like to me.
Now we've got another clip of a propeller aircraft, which this one's very intriguing for me. It's certainly doesn't look like.
This film was shot in June. I have met the chap who filmed this, and it was filmed in June in Cheshire. And it's basically, as you can see, a turboprop plane. In other words, not a jet engine. It's got a plane with propellers. And you can see that the plane is at a pretty low altitude, because at the last segment of the clip, it is flying through low cloud, which I think is perhaps something like alto cumulus cloud, maybe at, I don't know, possibly 10,000, 12,000 feet, this sort of altitude. And you can clearly see the trail is forming. Now, my understanding is, again, they seem to have changed the definition of this now on various websites, but that the contrails do not form below about 27,000,
Right.
26,000, 28,000 feet, that sort of region. Whereas this plane is much, much lower, and you can see the trail is left in the cloud, and then
It appears to switch on and then off
Indeed.
as well.
Indeed.
Which you could explain. You could say, well, it's flying through a particular into a different temperature, or maybe more moist air, which is causing it to look like it's going
Right.
on and off.
Right.
I'm just putting opposing view here.
Absolutely,
Absolutely. Because
this is, that's typically the argument that you will get.
Yeah.
If I was to go and present this to a weatherman, I'm sure he would say, well, that's obviously just going through a region of air which is where the air current is lower, the air's not moving as quickly, so it's more likely to form a persistent cloud of condensation. That is a type of hand-waving explanation that they would give you. And the problem, of course, is that you couldn't test that, because it's very difficult to get up to 10,000 feet, spray some fluid and measure that from the ground and film it, and actually repeat the experiment, with the same conditions. It's very difficult to reproduce that.
in that case, the after effects were filmed,
Yes.
where the trail seems to break up and we see different colours in it.
Correct.
So what do you think is causing these colours?
Well, I've heard it said by some people, for example, that this particular style of coloration, which it sort of looks like a rainbow, but then again it looks slightly strange if you look at it closely. It's caused by ethylene dibromide, which is apparently is some type of fuel additive, and there is a fuel additive that some of the smaller airlines use, and I forget the name of it, but it begins with P. I discovered this recently. I don't think any of the larger airlines use this fuel additive, but a few of the smaller ones apparently do use this fuel additive, and it's got ethylene dibromide in it. But in this particular clip, as you have noticed, the plane appears to bank round whilst it's spraying, which again, or leaving this trail, perhaps I should say, if I don't want to load the description.
Now we come on to this next clip, which was allegedly shot by a military pilot who was kind of tailing a passenger aircraft. Am I right?
That's right, yeah. This also was released quite recently. This came onto the internet on somebody's YouTube account. This fellow called himself on YouTube USAF FEKC-10.
US Air Force.
Yeah, FE I think means front end.
Right.
I don't know, that's just our guess. And KC-10 is a military version of a Boeing plane. I can't remember which one it is. I'm not an aircraft expert, but it's a military version of either the 737 or 757 Boeing plane.
Is he saying that that's what this craft is that he is filming from his military plane?
And if you listen to the soundtrack on the video, it does have a soundtrack, and you see him. He's obviously in a plane behind this KC-10, and he says, he's filming the trail coming out of the back of it, and you can see, looking at it superficially, it appears that the trail is switching on and switching off.
You see him spraying that chemtrail? Yep. Good thing we're above it.
And the argument that he makes is that this is, deliberate action on part of the plane, that this spray is being switched on and off. And if you look at it and you watch it, it does appear that is possibly what's happening.
So that's, for all it looks like a passenger airliner, that's actually a military plane.
Yes,
Right.
yes, yes.
So you see, I would hazard that if they are doing this, if they are wanting to drop something for whatever reason, that it would be unlikely that they might do it with passenger airliners, because they're out there for everyone to see. You know, they're at different airports all over the world, and the secret would get out. So
absolutely,
to me, it would be more likely to be something that might be military.
That's right, and this video was then posted. The guy said, "Oh look, I was in the KC-10. I filmed this chemtrailing activity. What do you think, folks? You know, this is," and he acted like he was a whistleblower. But then a week later, he withdrew the video, saying, "Sorry, it was just a joke on my part. This is just ordinary contrails coming out of the back of this aircraft, and I was just playing a joke on you." And he deleted his account, and we haven't heard from him again.
Right. So it's possible that he's had a bollocking off one of his superior officers to, you know, take that off. He's maybe being disciplined.
Right.
I'm only speculating.
Right, of course.
Which is why he's withdrawn it.
Absolutely.
Maybe even been, you know.
So, you know, the questions then arises, and I sent him some questions. Basically, well, you posted this film. This is before he posted it.
You contacted the guy.
Well, I tried to. Before he closed his account, I sent him a YouTube message, and I said, okay, let's just say that what we're actually seeing is not chemtrailing. What we're seeing is the plane just touching this boundary, you know, 27,000 feet, and it's just literally dipping in and out of that zone, and that's why the trail appears to be going on and off. And it could be that, you know, I'm trying to just also think of a rational explanation. So I asked him about that, what his explanation was of the trailing, and I asked him if he could reveal any information about what flight he was on. You know, was he flying from New York to Washington? You know, where was he flying? What was his source and destination? And, you know, just any information about that particular flight. Could he give us any clues as to what he was doing? And then you've got to ask yourself, well, if he's on a military flight, how come he's got a camera and he's filming it? Isn't that risking security, national security issues and all this, you know, revealing the pathway of where he's flying and the level of operations and blah, blah, blah. But unfortunately, he closed his channel. I never got an answer to those questions. So again, we're left with a mystery. Was he deliberately trying to lead people to a honeypot and then snatching that away, and therefore just enhancing the mystery of it and leaving people in doubt, which of course is what happens with, you know, UFO witnesses, like 9/11 witnesses that suddenly disappear, and on and on and on. I mean, you know how this works.
Yeah, I spoke to David Caton about chemtrails, and he was in the RAF for 10 years, and he worked at British Aerospace for 28 years. He was responsible for the testing of the aircraft, so vast knowledge of the ins and outs of how aircraft are made, how they're modified, how they're tested. And his comment was, well, if you're going to modify an aircraft to do another function, which would be to add chemicals to it, nozzles, whatever, however they're using it, tanks, he said that the procedures that you go through, you know, you have to involve design engineers, they have to produce drawings, they then have to have design reviews. If it's going to be a modification to the external part of the craft, you need to be, a whole rack of tests need to be carried out, where you have test engineers, then you have, you know, flight tests, and a lot of people are involved in modifying an aircraft. And he just thought, well, there's no way you could do that covertly. Someone would say, well, hey, they're fitting something to this craft. That, you know, it would get out. In other words, that's what his comment was. So,
absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that? Well,
this is very interesting, and I agree with that. I don't think I can argue with that at all. And you know, people. To add on to that, really, let's just take the argument, as I think I said earlier. We've got some type of fuel additive which is causing the trailing. You know, the trails to be persistent. Then these are finely tuned bits of machinery. So if you add, you know, an extra percentage of water or whatever it is to the fuel, that is going to affect the performance of the aircraft. And if it's some type of chemical, like people talk about barium and aluminium being added to the fuel, which if that was indeed being added, that would affect the performance of the engines, and you would get a residue of some type building up, you know, in the burners or wherever it was in the engine system. So, you know, you can't just blithely do that and expect that it's going to poison people or have the intended result. So what you might be looking at is a completely set of, I suspect if anything is going on, what we're seeing is a separate set of aircraft which are covert, and they're mixed in with the regular air traffic, and maybe even disguised as regular air traffic. And what they're doing is they're doing spraying irregularly. In other words, I think that all the persistent trails we see, they're not necessarily. Some of them may persist for different reasons. Some may persist because of natural conditions, and some may persist because the chemical composition of what's coming out of the back of the plane is not just water vapor and carbon dioxide. That is my current sort of
So you think
idea.
it's more likely that there's a place somewhere that is highly secure that's producing planes with a modification
Yes.
in them, and all of those people will have, some of them will have an Eton, some of them won't,
Yes.
and it's all compartmentalised. So there's a certain amount of planes that can do this.
Yes.
That's what you think might be happening.
Yes.
I mean, I did hear an interview where it was supposedly some guy who worked at a secret. I don't think it was a military, but I think it was a company, but he was saying that there was something strange going on where they were modifying these aircraft.
There was just a guy who was modifying the. I think he was looking at the water, inside the water, sort of from the bathrooms and the toilets, and he had to take out the tubes, and he was modifying them, and he found all these extra tubes. There's this story going around the internet. The guy is unnamed. The other story is Project Cloverleaf, which is reputed to be a black project recruiting the civilian airlines into the chemtrailing program. That's the other thing, that if you go onto the internet, you'll find about Project Cloverleaf. And again, we don't really have any verification of that. It's just another of these stories which may be true, but it might not be true. We don't really know.
All right, Andrew, well, we're going to go for another break, and after the break we're going to discuss some of the theories of what people claim are in these chemtrails.